All right, everyone, we are live. Welcome. This is SharePoint Power Hour, and this is a show that we have every Wednesday at 11 Central with our team of SharePoint consultants at Rackspace, plus today one extra, and various random people sometimes. Today, I'm Laura Rogers, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do an InfoPath demo today, and I actually even have some slides. But just in general, the gist of what SharePoint Power Hour is just, business solutions. So things that you can do in SharePoint and Office 365 out of the box without having to delve too much into programming or any kind of hardcore server admin. And today's demo is something that came in requested from some of you, the viewers, and I'm going to let everybody go through and introduce themselves, and then I'll get back and get to my slides and do a demo. And I have a guest in here, Lori Gowan. She's with Microsoft, and she's in here because she's pertinent to the topic I'm going to be talking about. So let's see, and Kevin is also here. I don't see your video, Kevin, but Kevin is new on my team at Rackspace. This is his first Power Hour, and so welcome, Kevin. And Kevin, can you hear me? He might be working on his audio and video since this is his first time doing this. Ryan, I'll let you go first.
Alrighty. Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Keller. I am the branding guy on Laura's team at Rackspace. We're doing SharePoint services. Basically, my job is to make SharePoint look not like SharePoint. So I've been doing that for about 3.5, 4 years now, and looking forward to Laura's demo today.
Okay, Joelle.
Hello, I am Joelle Farley. I am a consultant at Rackspace, and I actually work a lot with out-of-the-box features, so a lot of things that we talk about on Power Hour, as well as I do a lot of planning and design and governance, and I've worked with SharePoint for many years, full-time for many, many years. I'm excited about the session today.
All right, Tavis, you're next.
Hello everybody, my name is Tavis Lovell, and I am the Business Intelligence Developer on the Business Solutions team, so I deal with most things reporting and dashboarding, primarily inside of SharePoint, trying to get the data you need to you via SharePoint.
All right, okay, Lori.
Hi, I'm Lori Gowan. I'm a Premier Field Engineer with Microsoft. I specialize mostly in sorry, lost my train of thought. I specialize mostly on the server admin side. Also do a lot of power and end-user focus as well.
Okay, and Kevin, are you with us? I see that you've muted yourself, but all right, well, maybe when you get your audio and video figured out, let me know. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and, so the topic today, I've actually got a slide deck. I'm trying to be more, polished like Tavis and actually have, a planned out presentation. He inspired me. So I'll go ahead and share that. Let me see. Let's see. I think that's the right one.
Did you put really bad jokes in it?
Oh, no, I'm not that creative. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
And you all muted yourselves. Okay. All right, so today's topic is using inside of InfoPath, querying SharePoint list data and how you do that. We're going to talk about the basics of just how it functions and how it works and why you would want to do it that way, why do you want to do certain things. And we're going to talk about how it pertains to people, querying people, and also querying the user profile service to get specific information out there about people, like when people are filling out forms and you want it to pre-populate stuff. So you already know who I am. I live in Birmingham, but I went to LSU. I'm from Baton Rouge. Go Tigers. Hey. I've written a couple of SharePoint books here, and the agenda today is querying data from InfoPath, how to do that. There are a couple of different places we can get user data. I'll talk about those, and we'll talk about how to query profile information and how to do query profile information and also utilize that in conjunction with the people picker. So a lot of this stuff I've got blog posts I've written about before, and it's all in one big presentation now. All right, so in InfoPath, data is retrieved via data connections. So most common one, at least in my experience, is to retrieve data from a SharePoint list. And once we have that data inside of our InfoPath form, we're going to, some common places that we use it are going to be in drop-down boxes and lists of items that we have in our site, or just anywhere in our form that people are filling out. Let me go ahead and get my little screen pulled up so I can see if anybody's asking questions, by the way, as we go too. We have a little Q&A app, by the way. So if you're watching this in Google, you can click the little link that will take you over to the, if you're watching on YouTube, it'll take you to the Google Hangout, and once you get to the Google Hangout page, it'll have the little Q&A app where you can ask me questions as we go. That's the whole point of having it live. All right, and I'm going through the slides kind of fast because I know because the demos are pretty involved, so I don't want to run out of time. All right, so when we query data from within InfoPath, by default, all the data connection is just going to receive all the items in the data source. So as you're going through the little wizard to add data connections in your form, that's just a little checkbox that's checked to say, retrieve all the information every time the form's open or something like that. But for efficiency, you can make it so that you query just a specific subset of info. And this is useful in making it just, more efficient so that every time someone opens the form, it's not going to take a while to load if your list of data is very long or something like that. Every data connection, this was introduced in 2010, all your list data connections that you do from SharePoint lists are going to have a set of query fields and a set of data fields. So this list of actions here, this is the gist of what you need to know of how this works. You're going to use actions in your rules in InfoPath to do the following things. You're going to set the value of a query field. Then you're going to, can set multiple different query fields if you needed. Then, if you need to, then you're going to query the data. So once you've set the query field values and queried the data, then what you're going to have returned back is a very specific subset of information from that list instead of the entire list. So in the past, other ways people have gone about this or have just been to do like, if you need a subset of the information, you might just go do like a little filter on the data that's been retrieved. But it's actually more efficient to just go query and only bring back the subset of data instead of bringing the whole list in and then trying to do a filter of what you've already returned. All right. All right, so here's an example of a SharePoint list. So the SharePoint list that I happen to show in this screenshot is the user information list. But you'll notice this, again, 2010 and up, that whenever you do data connections to any SharePoint lists, you're going to have query fields and data fields. So first action is to set a query field. So I can say set the value of the query field to say IT. Then I run the query the user information list. Therefore, everything that gets returned to me it's only a list of the users in the IT department out of that whole big long user information list. So it's a very specific subset. I've seen people use this to where they just needed to have people that had a certain title. They didn't have like customer service manager or something like that. So that way you would query where the title is equal to customer service manager, and that way, and then they had it in a drop-down box for somebody to pick the customer service manager. So that's just an alternative. In that case, it would have been an alternative to using the people picker. Some people like drop-down boxes better than people pickers. Okay, so I'll go ahead and show you just the basics of querying like a list of departments, and then the basics of querying the user information list. And then we'll get to the whole web services thing in a minute. Let me move this out of the way. Okay. And y'all shout it out if somebody asks a question and I don't notice it. Let me go ahead and open my. I'm going to go ahead and open InfoPath. I used to have it in my, list of programs that I used all the time, and it was like always just readily available. And now I have to go like find it because I hardly ever use it. Okay, so I'm just opening up a brand new blank form in InfoPath just so I can show you these basics without getting too clouded as to what the whole big picture of whatever the form is. I just want to show you how to query the data. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to add like 2 fields in here, or 3 fields. I'm going to say employee and department and division. Right. And I'm going to add a couple of data connections. So I'm going to receive data from a SharePoint list. And I have a couple, let me show you my lists first that I'm going to use in here. So I'm going to go to this is my little demo environment here, my forms, my little demo forms portal. I have a list of departments here, which is just the name of the department and a code for that department. I see this a lot in just the customers that I've worked with. They have department codes, and they have those all throughout Active Directory, pretty standardized. And then we have the list of divisions, and that's actually a separate list. So we have just a simple list of departments, and then divisions is actually a pretty long list. Like we've got a lot of divisions. So each department is going to have multiple divisions. And this is a lookup. So when I go to this division settings, you can see that this department field is a lookup over to the department, bringing across the code. So I'll have that as well. Okay, so it's divisions, and then I've got a list of approvers too. So this is going to be a case where if you have, like in this example, if you have a form that needs to be routed to a VP, and depending on what department that user is in, that employee is in, the VP is going to be a different person. This is going to be a lookup list that I can use, that I can query from my InfoPath form to go find that specific person for whatever that specific department is, and go get that person's name. And this is another lookup field, and I also have the code coming across from that one too. Okay, so departments is the one I'm going to query first inside of my form.
You have a question, Laura.
Okay, just shout it out.
Does any of this apply to SharePoint 2013? In an experiment earlier, if I used InfoPath 2010 to modify a form for an Office 365 list, the form's UI is back to 2010.
Yeah, I don't use InfoPath 2010 on Office 365. So yeah, you have to have InfoPath 2013 if you're doing anything in Office 365 or SharePoint 2013. So that's what I have here. I'm using InfoPath 2013 on my desktop. It's part of Office Professional 2013, and you're just gonna need to have that version of InfoPath to be able to do that. Hopefully that answered the question. All right. So go point to my site, and then once I'm picked my site, I'm going to pick my list of departments. Now, why wouldn't I just go get the list of divisions and just get the department field out of the division list? Well, I'm going to go ahead and do departments separately, and I'll show you a couple of reasons. So I'll get the department name and the code, and then I'm going to sort, so I can actually sort it by the department name if I do this. So in each data connection, you can pick one field to sort by. So with doing I'm going to do 2 separate data connections. That's going to let me have the departments drop down sorted by department name. And then once somebody picks a department, then I'm going to have a divisions drop down that's going to be filtered to only show the divisions for that specific department that they already picked. And those are going to be in alphabetical order by division. Now departments, I am going to allow that to automatically retrieve the data when the form is open, because that is it's a very small list of departments. It's not as extensive as like the divisions list, and I need them to have that whole list of departments in the drop-down when they're first filling out the form. So that one's not going to hurt to have that open every time the form is open. So I'll go ahead and show you what that would look like here. I can take department and drag it onto the form and then make it a drop-down list. And here's where I need to pick my external data source. And the good thing about this being recorded is that if I'm going too fast and you get lost, you can just pause it and rewind it, right? So my data source is my departments. And then what do I want as the value that gets stored for that department name? Maybe I'll put the code, like the department code. Maybe that's my value. And then the display name is going to be the full name of the department. There's also an option in here to show only entries with unique display names. Well, over in my SharePoint list of departments, if I have gone into my list and gone to my list settings, and in the department name, if I make that require to enforce unique values, then that's one way of making sure that I'm not going to get any duplicate department names. So I've set enforced unique values to yes. That way people aren't going to accidentally put like the IT department in there twice or something. I could put that for the code field too if I wanted. All right. Okay, so that's my department. I can do a quick preview and see that it's got my list of departments. And I haven't even published this to my SharePoint site yet. I'm just demoing it in the client. All right, so now for my division field, I'm going to need to have my divisions data connection. This is where it starts to get kind of fun, where we're going to be querying that specific information. Got all kinds of crap in there. Nope, what is that? All right, then my divisions. Okay, so I'll need the division name. I'm going to need the department. Let's see, it's not going to have that department code. So remember, the department code was one that I pulled over as like an extra. Remember when I did the lookup, I pulled over the department code as an extra field. It's not giving me that as an option in here to pull that in. So that's just important to note there. I'm going to have these listed by division name. So I'm going to have the name of the department and the ID of the item and the name of the division. That's what I have to work with. So let's go see what we can do here. So I'm not going to automatically retrieve data when form is opened. Okay, so this is where I start showing you how to go filter specific, to go query specific list data. So what I'm going to do, and this is a great way to just test stuff as you're building your form, just create like some blank view and start testing this by just dragging fields on here. I'm going to go to my divisions data source over here on the right, and I'm going to take this whole query fields thing and just drag it onto the page just so I can see those fields and I can work with those. Then I'm going to stick a button on here, and this is just going to do a query. So behind this button, all I'm going to do is do an action that queries for data, and I'm going to query the divisions. All right, and I can even make it say, query like that. Then underneath that, I'm going to have my list of data fields that get returned. So I'm going to set a value of a query field, then I'm going to do the query, then I'm going to see that it's going to return some data back. So I'll just put that in here as a repeating table since there isn't that much of it. It shouldn't hurt. All right, and I can still do this in the preview mode here. All right, so this is irrelevant right now. I'm not using this yet. But what I can do is, let's see, so departments, let's see what happens if I type IT in here and do a query. It gives me an error. So there's nothing in there. Okay, let's try this. Ooh, it's not doing that either. Invalid departments specified in the query fields. Okay, so I need to go look at my list and see what those actual departments are called. Oh, look at that. See, it's a lookup field. So it's a little different, right? Because the data is not stored as just the word when it's a lookup field. That's going to be stored as what? Anybody know? I'm just asking you, a handful of people. It's going to be stored as the ID. At least it should. So let's try this. Department, let's see, IT should be, and how do I know which one is which ID? I can go modify my view of the departments and stick the ID on there so I can double check this. All right, so if I want IT, that's going to be ID number 2. So I should be able to try this in my little preview for this form. I should be able to type a 2 in there. Oh, look at that. So this is why we test these things. This is why we go in here and instead of just getting frustrated that our drop-down box isn't doing what we want it to do and it's not showing any values like I did the first 2 times, this is how we test to see what is actually going to allow us to return some values here. So this tells me that if I want to narrow down this list of divisions, that I'm going to need to use a number for the department field. Thanks, Shweta. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, it's going to be the ID though is what's being stored. Okay. Now, so to make that function, I'm going to need to, when people pick a department, I'm going to make it immediately and automatically filter that next drop down, which is going to be the list of divisions. So that, and I'm going to need to use this number. So this means that right now I have, so in my department dropdown, what am I doing? I've got a, for the value I'm storing the code, and that's like just the 2-letter code, remember? So it's going to be this. So querying it by the code, remember I tried that, it didn't work, it didn't return anything. And then querying it by the full name didn't return anything. I'm going to need to be able to query it by the ID. So I'm going to have to store, as the value of the department that they pick, I'm going to have to use the ID of that department. Even though the pretty little display name that they see in the drop-down box is going to be the name, the full name of the department, I have to have that ID to be able to query that other list. So now I can take my division and I'll just like drag this here and make this a drop-down box. And then for my division, I'm going to need to point this over to my list of divisions. So the value for division, it's not going to be as important. It can just be the title, like the full word of whatever the division is, and the display name can just be the title. The trick is that before we, they're even clicking on the division, it's going to need to be filtered. So to do that, to make it do the filter, instead of like what I did here was I just typed a number and then I clicked the query button and then I saw the results, I'm going to do that exact same thing with my little manage rules pane. And let's see, I have a blog post that I wrote, kind of the whole reason that I did this, I'm doing this presentation is that I have a blog post that I wrote about querying this specific list information, so you guys will have something to refer to. Here it is. Copy shortcut, and I'm going to put that in the little, there's a little showcase app in here. It's a little yellow icon, and it should, it's showcase is apparently not working, so I don't know. The name of the blog post is InfoPath Query Specific List Data. You guys let me know if you can get it to work, but it's giving me an error. You never know with Google Hangouts. Every time we do this this thing every week, random things will show up and appear, and we'll have new things. We'll have new things that are broken. So it's one of those things with using the cloud, right? All right, so I'm going to click on this department field, and I've got my rules pane over here. So I'm going to create a rule that's going to run as soon as a department is picked. So what happens as soon as someone clicks to select a department? I'm going to, there's no condition, it's just going to happen every time somebody changes the department. I'm going to set a field's value. So I'm going to go over to my divisions data source and set the, what is it, the department. I'm going to set the department query field. Remember, that's the one I filled in over here. And what's the value I'm going to put it in? I'm going to put the value of whatever the department is that they just picked in the drop-down box. And then I'm going to query for data. I'm going to query the divisions. So that is what gives me, is going to return a specific list. Okay. Shweta says you were describing Office 365. The cloud? Yes, I am. Hint, hint. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to query, and then the list of divisions should magically show up. So let's try this. Okay, customer service. You still see this visually down here because I didn't get rid of it, the little testing that I was doing, but look at that. Now I can see it over here. And then I'm going to go change it to IT. You can see that it immediately queried a different subset. So the only data that's returning in that data connection is that specific set of divisions for that one department. Isn't that neat? Is there like an applause app or something? Come on, you guys are no fun. So then they can go pick a division. So once you understand the gist of how that functions, there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do with that knowledge. So I can also go to, you know, pick my list of from my list of approvers. So remember my list of approvers that I had? Let me go to that site that I had. My list of approvers. And again, the department is also stored as an ID in here, so that will return just, if I query the list of approvers by that one department, it will return that one row. So I can do that like also right here in the same thing. So I can go add another data connection to my list of approvers. So let's see, title, VP, I don't know. I don't think I'm using the title field in there, but whatever. Let's take that out. Yeah, the name of the department, the VP, and then department ambassador. In some cases I've seen, like when you have to route something that, you know, it goes to just, is there just some other role in that department who needs to do stuff specific to that department? I don't need to do any sorting because guess what? I'm only ever going to be returning a single row, because each department only has a single row. It only has a single set, you know, of people. Each column is a single person. So when someone picks a department, I can also go query that data. Now I don't necessarily need that approver data yet. So if I'm going to go query that, you know, that approver information as soon as they pick a department, I need to have something to do with it, right? So if I query it now when they pick a department, but they're not using that data that got queried at all, then kind of what's the point? And then the next time somebody opens the form up to go do an approval or do something else, you're not going to have that queried data anymore, because it only gets queried when someone actually takes the action of selecting a department. So one thing that I can do is I can say, I'm just going to add another field in here. I'm going to say VP person, like that. So then when I can pick a department, say set of fields value, and then go over to the approvers, query fields, and pick department here, and set that to the value of the department they just picked, and then query the approvers. So that's just going to return one approver, and then I can just kind of, I'm going to get rid of kind of some of this. No, I'm going to take, I just want you guys to see what this looks like. So I'm just going to put this person's name here. You don't need to show it on the form as long as you can just store it in this field and have it for later, right? So I'll go ahead and just see what that looks like. Okay, accounting didn't get anybody. Now it's returning the departments, but oh, I didn't set it to the value. So I queried the field, but then I didn't go set the VP person value at all, right? And I can tell that real quick because I'm on VP person, and I can right-click on it. I can say Rule Inspector, and it has no rules. See on the right? Nothing, no rules are doing anything to set that value. So that's just one place that I can look. Okay, so after it queries to get that one approver, I need to go do something with it, right? So then I'm going to go set the value of the VP person to be that single approver record that got returned. And I can pick here, I have a choice. So display name is going to be, account type's just going to say like user or group. It's not very useful. Display name is going to be the pretty name, like the first name, last name. And the account ID is going to be unique, domain/username. So I usually like to use account ID because that's much more useful to me to have that unique string than just like a pretty first name, last name. You could do both. I mean, you could have like two separate fields. One's like called VP account and one's called VP display name or something like that, and you could just set both of them to each of these different values. But in this case, I'm just going to set it to the account ID. And then, so now I'm going to try that one more time. Look at that. So now it's kind of ugly the way it stores it, you know, with claims now in 2013 in Office 365. But that's that person's account name. So, all right. So, where do we go from here? So one thing we can do is something very common is that we need to know information about the logged in user. Like we just want the department of the logged in user to automatically be filled in, or we just want a people picker to automatically be filled in with the logged in user, and like all this information like their department, their phone number, and all this extra stuff automatically filled in according to who that is. And that's where the user profile service is going to come into play. Before I dealt, and again, user profile service is a web service, so that's a whole different way of querying information. But you can also go and query the user information list. Now, the only reason, usually I like to use the user profile service over the user information list, but because kind of one of the negatives of that list is that it only is going to have the accounts of people that have ever been to that site collection. So if people are new to the company or something like that, they're not necessarily going to be in that list immediately until they, so if they're, the first thing they ever do is go try and fill out this form, and that's the very first time they've been to the site collection, that's when their name gets added to the user information list, so you might see issues there. And just in general, if you're trying to query people and they've never been to the site collection, they won't be in the list. So it's not going to be the most accurate. Now, if you're a fairly small company and you only have one site collection and pretty much everybody at the company, you know, is just in general goes there on a frequent basis, it's going to be, you know, more reliable. And also in cases where you have weird security issues and some sort of weird VPN or some sort of weird way that people access your information, your SharePoint site, and the web service is just not going to work at all, it's not going to function for you, that's another case where you would resort to the user information list. Maury, have you seen that a lot with just kind of people with weird authentication types and stuff like that, with not being able to use it at all?
A few times. I run into more of like what you say. I work with a lot of large enterprises. The user information list to query for a specific user is usually useless because there's no way to know if they actually have ever visited that site collection.
That's true. Okay. Okay, so instead of just picking like these other SharePoint lists, I'm going to see this other one called User Information List, which is kind of a weird little hidden one, right? Because you're not necessarily going to see that ever in site contents and stuff like that. That's where all your users are stored. So I can pick and choose what fields I want to you know, pull in. Their picture, department, title, first name, last name, all kinds of cool stuff. And I can sort it by their name, anything like that. And then in most cases, you're going to have, you know, hundreds of people. All the people in your whole company are going to be in that list. You're not going to want to return the whole thing. But that's another reason to go query specific information. So you do the same exact thing. You would say set the value, and I'm just going to highlight this real quick. Shweta says, would integrating with Shibboleth cause an issue? I don't know what that is. Has anybody heard of that? I've never heard of that word. Okay, so for the user information list, I'm going to set the value of a query field. Like if I set department, if I say the value of department is IT, and then run the query against this list, everything that returns in these rows that get returned is going to be everybody in IT. So the one I'm about to show you, the user profile service, is always only going to return a single record, a single person. And this user information list has the potential you could return multiple people, and that would be useful if you needed to have a list of multiple people, like in a drop-down box, or something like that that you wanted people to see and then pick from. Shweta says, or a hybrid environment where Exchange is on-prem but SharePoint is in the cloud. This has nothing to do with Exchange or what's integrated with what. This is all your users are going to be either directly entered in Office 365 in your list of your users in your Office 365 admin, or they're going to be synchronized and pulled in from your company's Active Directory, and that's where all the users come from. Hopefully that answers your question. All right, so here's where the tricky part comes in, and this is the part that you might think was broken in when you got upgraded to 2013 or you moved to Office 365, is the whole user profile service thing. So I'm going to go ahead and say SOAP web service, and this is going to be name of my site / God, it's been so long since I've done this, CPI/bin user profile service. There are a whole bunch of SharePoint web services too that you could potentially tap in the same way. Not all of them are very necessarily the most useful in here. And it's talking to my website. There we go. Let's see. Okay. Most commonly used I'm not going to go into what all these operations are, but I'm going to say get user profile by name. And I'm going to, this is your choice, automatically retrieve data when the form is opened or not. For now, I'm going to uncheck this. And then I'm going to show you what the problem is with it and why it doesn't work. I'm going to delete some of this other stuff that I did in this little test that I was doing. And I'm going to go over to this new web service that I added. This web service only has a single query field. It has account name. That's why it was called get user by name. So I'm going to drag that onto the form. And then I'm going to change my little query button to query the user profile, get user profile by name. And then I'm going to throw some of these, like the data that gets returned. Again, remember, it's just a single person that's going to get returned. And then it gives you all this other crap in here that you don't need. I like to delete because I don't want it to be too messy. All right, now, here's the issue. So I can do this in my little preview pane in here. So let's see. So it's querying the list, and look at that. Okay, so in my preview pane in the InfoPath filler, it is returning what it's supposed to return. So the syntax is going to be domain/username, and then you query and you get all this great information about whoever you queried. So it's got my first name. So here's the name is the name of the field. This name of this field is last name. And I've got preferred name, which is really useful, and I love using it. I use it all over the place. It's the pretty first name, last name in most cases. I've got 20 minutes left. And then like work phone and department and manager is always really useful to have if you want to be able to like route forms to somebody's manager. And you can see the names. This is also really important. The names of what all these fields are. Like username is just going to give like that actual, that's your like your NT domain login name without like the name of your domain in front of it. So all kinds of cool stuff in here coming from that user profile. You get their email address. Anyway, but this, again, it's not only useful for finding the data, but it's useful for finding what the names of some of these fields are and what they call it in here, in case you need to refer to it later. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and publish this to SharePoint for the first time. Oops, I can. Forms. And then I'm not going to add any columns right now. I just need to quickly publish this so I can demo it in the browser for you. Feel free to chime in, anyone, if you had anything to throw out there.
I was wondering if we should place bets on whether it'll work or not.
It's not going to work. I tested it in another form right before this started, so that's why we have to do your blog post, which we'll need to have handy. Okay, so here's where I would type Contoso/Laura, and then do the query, and then look at that. An error occurred querying a data source. Has anybody seen this? Like you guys who are out there watching, I know that there are 18 of you out there. An error occurred when trying to connect to a web service, and you're like, I can't use the user profile service anymore in Office 365 or SharePoint 2013. Like no matter what I do, it will not give me back any information. Well, there is a way around it, right, Lori? So this is Lori's blog post that she wrote, and I don't know if that app is, anybody see if that Showcase app is working? Oh, it's working now, so I'll go ahead and grab that. So this is going to show, this is the right one, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yep, that's the one.
Okay, so that's what you guys are going to be able to see that in the little Showcase app now. And basically what Lori's telling you is the first thing I'm going to have to do with this data connection that I already created is convert it to a data connection file. So I have to go back over to InfoPath and go to my data connections. I have to have somewhere to put it though. So when I convert something to be a data connection file, it needs to go in a data connection library. So I need to go over to my library. I need to go over to my site here. And come on, stop it. /forms, delete, there. And make sure, so I don't have a data connection library yet. I'm going to need to do add an app and add I'm just going to type data. Here we go, data connection library. And I'm just going to call it data. I need to have that, and I need to have the URL to that for when I do this new data connection, this new converting it to a data connection file. So I'm just going to take this whole URL. This is I hate URLs in 2013. I know that there's a feature that you can enable to make them go back to being pretty, but I need /forms/data there. I just need the URL to that library that I just created. And then I need to, when I click convert to connection file, that's where, see, it's telling me this is your site, your department site, data connection library /file.udcx. So I actually have to name it right here too. I'm going to call it user profile.udcx. Anybody that's following that, let me know if I screw something up. Oh, Kevin says Shibboleth is an authentication mechanism for Blackboard Learn. Who knew? Kevin, care to elaborate? I see that you've muted yourself, though. Do you have an answer to his question that he had? I don't think Kevin can hear me.
I don't. I'm not quite sure what the question was. I just heard you ask what it was, or didn't know what it was.
It was, let's see, I'm going to look at the questions. Would integrating SharePoint with Shibboleth cause an issue with any of this? And with what I'm doing? I don't know. Okay, yeah, and Dan says, I believe Shibboleth is an authentication, identification, management solution like Active Directory. If configured correctly, you should not have issues. Well, thank you, Dan. All right. Thanks, Dan. He said if configured correctly, you should not have issues. Got it. I had never heard of that. Okay, so I converted it to a connection file. So then what happened? Like, you didn't realize we were going to get this in the weeds in this demo, did you? I'll go ahead and refresh that. So now I have a file. It created this file in my data connection library. The purpose behind data connection libraries in InfoPath is really just to be able to have like a central location. Like if you have common data connections you use all the time, like divisions and departments and user information list, you can create them, convert them to a connection file, and use that, that same connection file in multiple forms. All right, so what's the next step? Okay, we did that. We named it.
Modify that file.
Ugh. Okay. I have to go into the secure store.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Fine. Okay, so that's going to be under Service Applications. In Central Admin, you definitely didn't realize we were going to be going to Central Admin, did you? I could have sworn I did this already.
If you have one that you already have, you can reuse, but you just have to have them configured.
You just have to do it once? Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to call this. I don't think I've done it once, because I would have probably called it the same thing that you called yours in your blog post. So let me maximize that. Okay, say new. And then target application, I'll call this InfoPath ID.
Yes.
So to reiterate, you only have to do this part once for all your forms.
Right. You can do multiples if you want to limit like use of it by specific individuals, especially if you're going to have to do this with other web services, because here's a hint, other web services don't like claims either.
Oh.
So you could actually do that and create multiples and put them in different connections if you have security requirements for that. But for the user profile service, usually everybody's going to use it, so you could do it once and just use it everywhere.
Okay. Good to know. So let's see. I've got so much stuff running on my computer right now. I'm going to close Skype. All right, target application administrators. That's going to be me as like the admin. Got 10 minutes. And then this is everybody, domain users. Let's see, I'll just type the whole thing.
This is where I see people mess up a lot of times in secure stores. You have to have the people you want to be able to use this account in the members section.
Right.
Great tip there, Travis. Thanks. All right, now I have an application ID. Yay. All right, so, and if you were not a server admin, you have to get your server admin to do this. Now I have to go in here and do set credentials. That's another step that I see people forgetting, like skipping over too, because it's not part of the wizard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Windows username, I'm just going to put my admin account again. Of course, this is just my VM, so it doesn't really matter. I think it's an administrator, yeah. And type this right. Sorry for that. I know my keyboard's so loud with this really sensitive microphone that I have. Okay, so Oh, I need to go to my general application settings now.
Yep.
Configure InfoPath. Good grief. Configure InfoPath form services. Okay. Allow user form templates to use authentication information contained in data connection files. This one right here?
That's the one. If you don't do that, then all the other work is for nothing.
Okay. I can imagine that people skip over that too. Now we have to go back to our data connection. Let me go and minimize my VM here. And we close that, minimize that, and go back to this. Okay, so now we're in, this is the data connection. We actually have to go edit this file. So we have to, what, download it, right?
You have to, yes, you have to download it because it's a text file. You can't just edit in the browser.
Okay, I'll just put it here on my desktop. Userprofile.udcx, and then I'm going to have to go minimize all kinds of other crap, go find my desktop. And I do have slides too. I have a couple more slides. Okay, userprofile.udcx. Here's the file. Goodness. Okay. So what we're looking for in here is the part about authentication.
Scroll down. Yep.
Okay, right here.
Yep.
So we have to add something. And
First you have to take away something too.
okay.
You have to uncomment it. So take the exclamation and 2 dashes off there.
This thing
and the
right
2
here?
dashes at the end. Yes.
Okay.
And then the 2 dashes at the end.
At the end of what?
Where you see UDC : authentication 1 line down. Take those 2 dashes off.
Oh, that. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And
Not
then
boring.
it's okay. Then you can put in your app ID and your credential type.
And those go. That goes in between here, like this.
In the quotes. Nope.
No. Oh, undo. Oh, in here.
Yeah.
All right. So that's in your blog post too. That's
Right.
app ID is me. Okay.
Should be just like InfoPath ID or whatever you named it.
And then credential type is NTLM. Okay.
Right.
Okay, I gotta save that. And then I have to actually upload that back to my library. So I'm gonna do upload here.
Mm-hmm.
And find that on my desktop. Oh, what is that? Where did it go? Oh, there it is. I'm sure that's fine. Okay. All done?
That's it.
Okay, so now I should be able to go to that same form and it just works. Let's see.
You have to publish it.
Oh, I have to publish the form again since I did the, since I changed my data connection. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and publish that. And then I'm going to go through the rest of my slides. And basically, you know, what you have with this user profile web service, and there are a bajillion blog posts out there about it, by the way, not just mine, but is that now that you know how to set a query field and do a query, like I showed you on the list, you do the same thing with the get user profile by name. So that's how you can get you know, information. Let's see, I'll go refresh this. So now let's see, Contoso query. Oh my gosh, it worked. So one more quick important thing to kind of finish up that part about the using that user profile service is something I commonly do is I go current user and I have a field that on form load I just populate a value in there. So what I do is that I'll say get user. So this is a new form load rule, and just every time the form loads, I'm going to say set a field's value, and I'm going to set the value of this current user field to this value, so I need to know who the logged in username is so that I can query the user profile service, right? So if I get the substring after the username, after the little pipe symbol, because remember, your claims authentication has all these weird like characters and stuff in it. So if I go substring after the username, after the little pipe symbol in there, and I set that value in current user, then it's going to say contoso/Laura. And then I can say set a field's value. I can go set the value of this query field, and then I can get that whole user profile information about who the logged in user is, and then I can go set all the fields of all these other things that I don't have time to do right now. That's why I've been talking fast. I told you it was a lot of stuff. So demo, SharePoint user data, Active Directory to user profile service user information list. Yeah, well, remember with this is keep your Active Directory cleaned up, right? So here's just some examples about what's in the user information list and the user profile service and how you query the user info list. Use that username function in InfoPath. And you can use that to grab just one item out of the user info list, but you could also use that username to grab, that one. See, you set it to account name, domain/username, run the query. Remember, the name is the name of the field, like first name, last name, preferred name, account name, stuff like that. And the value is the value in the field, like that person's phone number, their email address, or whatever. So again, this is what that data is going to look like. And then this is again, you might want to just like do this in your form and print it out to have it as a reference to have all those field names. And then I already demoed that. And then I already wrote a blog post on how to pre-populate the people picker. So I can put that in here if I find it. And again, display name is the first name, last name. Account ID is domain/username. So once you've returned that user's record from the user profile service, you'd say set a field's value, and you'd set the display name here in the people picker to be the preferred name from that person's account, and then you'd set the account ID to be that account name. It's account name, one long word, from that user's account. The account type's just going to be user. Again, I wrote a whole blog post about that. All right, yeah, I didn't think I would have time to do every single one of those demos, but let me go grab, I'll turn my stop sharing and go grab a couple of those links real quick. First of all, here is, I'm just going to paste this whole category in here. And oh, we've got several questions. So let me go paste this in here real quick for you guys who have questions, and then I'll go answer them. Okay, so I just basically did a filter of just all my InfoPath blog posts, so that'll help, and then I'll just give you kind of all that different stuff that I was talking about. Angie says, this is great information. Thank you, Angie. I appreciate it. Shuita says, for later, for review with a meeting and a meeting to, that's a, yeah, we can talk about that later in another one. I'm running out of time in this one, though. But, yeah, I'll look at that, and I'll look at a different Power Hour with a demo of using those date fields, if I can figure out how to do what you're asking. Okay, and then Angie just says, yay, cool. Thanks, it must have been when I was doing a little applause thing. All right, well, thanks so much, Lori, for helping me out, and I hadn't gone through that blog post in a while, so I totally would have screwed that up. Joelle, other guys, have you guys come across people needing to do this? That people are obviously still using InfoPath, right? I know, Joelle, you do probably a lot more of these too. I think you're muted. There
Yeah,
you
actually, I haven't had anyone need this since in 2013 yet.
Wow.
So.
Are people kind of gradually, well, not as gradually, are they quickly moving away from InfoPath? And I know a lot of
complex.
Do what?
Anything complex. They don't want to, like, they'll build simple things with InfoPath still that they could easily just change over and migrate once there's a new solution there. But anything complex, it seems like people are avoiding. And so, Well, we think that's not that. I mean, it's complex, but it's not that complex. But to a lot of those people, that's like a lot more time than they're willing to put into something that's going to go away, I guess. I don't know. Seems to be the overall attitude.
Yep, I've been trying to avoid InfoPath and everything that I do lately. It's a fun challenge. All right, cool. Thanks everybody for coming next week. I'm not sure what the topic's going to be, but we'll put it out there on our YouTube channel. And again, it's youtube.com/SharePointRax, and we are SharePoint.rackspace.com is our website. And thanks everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.